real quick, that the property walkthroughs you guys are doing next week or this Saturday.
Yes.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make it. We had already scheduled a trip, but when will you guys be doing another one of those in the near future?
I'm sure we will. We don't have any plans specifically, but it's something that we'll do at least a couple times a year.
Okay, awesome. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? We may have some other folks join as we're going through this, but this is the quick rehab estimate worksheet review. We're going to go over how to do a quick rehab estimate as you're looking at houses. Keith and I have used this tool for several years, and so we're going to talk about how to use that and get everybody familiar with using that when you're looking at houses. So Ken Collins, I've been doing real estate now full-time for about 8 years. I too, Yvette, lost my job when I first started and found out that there's a lot of creative ways to do deals because banks generally don't like people who are unemployed, and I didn't want to ever go get another job. So that's how it is. So, but I've been doing this, as I said, I've done approximately 50 deals in that amount of time, and always working on something. And if you come, you'll see one of the projects I'm working on Saturday. So go ahead, Keith.
Brilliant. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Keith McHugh, and I have been active in real estate investing here recently for the past about 11 years or so, 11, 12 years. Originally, or in a longer time frame, I bought my first house when I was 19 and got my real estate license when I was 20 and turned that first house into a rental when I was 22. So I've been involved with real estate for 30, 35 years or so. And recently, over the past decade, I've been focusing on flips and wholesaling and wholetailing, and then occasionally retaining a long-term hold. More recently, I've been doing a lot of private lending for my primary activity, and I'm looking into moving into self-storage and commercial for the near future. So that's what I've been up to.
All right.
Can I just ask, because I don't see a chat in here. I can't find the chat. Where I see all the hands, the emojis, the microphone, everything. I don't see a chat.
Over in the lower right-hand corner, there's something that looks like a thought or a speaking bubble. Do you see that?
Okay. I got it now. Thank you. I just want to know, where are you, Ken, where are you showing that the home that you're working on?
There's one in Lake Mills, and then we're going to go to Stoughton. The one in Lake Mills is just nearly finished rehab. The one in Stoughton has just gone for sale, and I talked to the owner. He's not going to accept any offers until after we go through and get an opportunity if anybody within our group wants to put an offer in. It's a flipper who his partners just decided to quit and move to Arizona, so they've got a house that they never started that they want to sell off. So.
And where can I find information? Is it on your, I don't find out where all this stuff is?
Yeah, we'll near the end of the presentation, we'll get into that. So
thank you.
All right. So basically, we're going to go through this pretty quick. We're just going to go over the quick rehab estimator worksheet, then have a Q&A session, and then talk about what we're going to do for the property tour, if any of you, for those of you who are going to join it. Keith and I have been involved in the coaching program that's been with the Madison RIA, which was the first RIA before any of the other Wisco RIAs came into play. And we learned how to do a lot of what we did, or a lot of what we're doing from that. So the worksheet we're going to go over, and by the way, Keith, could you throw the worksheet into the chat so that everybody can download that? There we go. That was
funny. You should ask. It's telepathy on top of it.
So go ahead and download that for those of you. I hope you're able to find the chat now, but the worksheet is in there so you can see that. And the whole purpose of the worksheet is to be able to go and look at properties and get a very rapid initial cost estimate for what it might cost. Sorry,
again. Yeah, that download link is slightly broken, so I'm fixing it, and I'm gonna put up a new one in just a moment. So hang tight, everybody. Go ahead and listen to Ken's beautiful, silky voice, and we'll have that link fixed in a second.
So, the main thing is to be able to get a fast cost estimation, which will allow you to make a quick decision while you're on site or shortly after you leave in terms of how much you can pay for the property, and that will improve your competitiveness when you're bidding on properties. What we're really talking about is, I'm sure, has everybody heard about 70% of ARV minus repairs?
Mhm.
Anybody not know what that is? Okay. It's a long tried and true method for evaluating properties as a real estate investor to determine if you can buy it and what you can buy it for. And so what this sheet seeks to answer is that minus repairs. What does it cost to repair? Because that can be wildly, a wildly different number based on a lot of different factors. And so it's important for you to know at least what you can pay based on what you're planning to do to the property. Any questions? Were you able to get the new link in there?
I just tested it. It worked for me. Anybody having any problems with it?
I got it up on my screen.
Perfect.
It's fine.
Excellent.
And if you want to retain that, just download it and save it anywhere on your computer. It's just a simple PDF file. If you want to print it, it prints on 2 pages, front and back, ideally. So it's formatted for you to be able to use it right out of the gate.
All right. So basically, this is the quick rehab estimator worksheet. It's got 5 sections. Just one section for the property information, a section for exterior, section for interior, a section for miscellaneous items, and then a section at the bottom where you take notes as well as add up what the cost of the rehab is. So it's a pretty straightforward sheet. It's not difficult to use, but we're going to spend a little time talking about it. And feel free to jump in at any time, Keith, and add to it.
Yeah, hey.
All right, so the first section is the property data, and basically it's important to fill this out because especially if you do any kind of volume, you're going to find over time, you're going to forget what you looked at and where it was and all the details. And so it's important to fill this out so that when you're looking back at the sheet at a later point in time, you know what you're looking at. I've had people contact me to buy houses that I had looked at a year and a half earlier in one case. And I was able to go back to the sheet and at least see where it was at that point. In fact, I just did that just this weekend. Last weekend, I went and looked at a property that I had looked at 6 months earlier. I went and looked at it for the second time. And, so it was good to have the sheet and understand what I had seen the previous time. And this is pretty straightforward. You get the address. There's space for if you've got this. You probably need to fill out a couple of these sheets if you have more than 2 units. Like if it's a duplex, it'll work. But if you have additional units beyond that, you can take another sheet. And then there's information you can put regarding the MLS, who the listing agent is, who it was referred by, especially if you're giving bird dog fees or things like that. You're paying out to people who bring you leads. It's good to keep track of that. And then who looked at it, whether it was vacant or not. And then, the make OTP is whether you're going to make an offer to purchase. It's just a way to evaluate, is this something you actually want to make an offer on? So it's pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions about that section?
Well, and I want to touch on one other thing, and that is the third line up there. You have the address, you have the square foot current, but you also have the square foot proposed. So that's helpful because you can use this in a couple different ways. You can actually use this a couple of different times for the same property from the standpoint of if you're figuring that you can take a property and do major renovations to it or structural changes to it. So for instance, going from, a 1-story building to a 2-story building, and you want to look at it a couple different ways, you can do one quick rehab sheet with keeping the structure, keeping the property as a single level, or you can do a second one. And on that third line, add in there the notes that you're going to add a floor, add bedrooms, add bathrooms, what have you. But that proposed renovation line can play a decent role in this as well.
Yeah. And when we're going to look at the properties on Saturday, the second property in Stoughton that's for sale, one of the, at least what the current rehabber who owns it, his plan was to turn it from a 2 to a 3 bedroom. And so that would fit perfectly for that particular property. All right. Any questions on that before we move on to the next section? All right. So the exterior, this is pretty straightforward. So you've just basically got your category. We've got multiple sections, and then we've got, they can either be, each, let's just look, for instance, at that exterior, the demo. Would that be the number of dumpsters?
No, that's total cost.
No, I'm talking about your exterior demo. You got 600. You're just
the number
going
of
on
dumpsters? Yeah, 1,200
Yeah,
each. Depending on where you are. Ken and I actually had a good conversation about this a few days ago, where outside of Madison, you may not be paying anywhere near to this, but if you're doing renovations, on the west side of Madison or downtown, where the prices of dumpsters are getting a little higher, and the getting the dumpsters to the landfill is a little bit more, you could end up paying a little bit more for that service.
Yeah. And so we've got some where you can actually, we've got an Excel spreadsheet that we don't give out unless you're in our coaching program. It's basically because the maintenance of it is a bit of a task, and we don't want to be trying to answer questions to hundreds of people. We've given this out to a lot of people, but basically some of these are calculatable fields. So if you were to put the number of dumpsters in there, it'll calculate the total for you. Otherwise, on something like the roof that we've got here, you kind of have to, for the purpose of this, make an estimate of if it's a small versus a large, or I guess somewhere in between would be medium size, and you get a number in there. And of course, what we've got here is not going to give you a dead on accurate number. It's more or less a number that you can be pretty confident you're going to do well with if you do purchase the house. And what I mean by that is you might estimate the roof at, let's just say $10,000, and then it could be something else like let's just say concrete, and you estimate that based on square footage. And then you might find that you have the concrete, maybe you estimated 12,000, and the roof you estimated 10. And then when you're actually doing the rehab, things don't always come out exactly as expected. And you might find the roof was a little less expensive and the concrete was more, or vice versa. But in the end, this gets you a pretty close approximation, so that the amount you're subtracting for your repairs are pretty good. So is there any questions about this section, or does anybody have something in particular they'd like us to talk about?
Ken, can I ask, with what you've got there on the worksheet, is it editable?
Well, what you've got is a PDF, so that is not. I mean, I guess there are ways to edit a PDF, but the way you're going to use this is just writing on it with a pen or pencil.
Well, no, what I basically meant, because if you said depend upon the area, which I understand, and you use dumpsters for an example. Let's say each dumpster in our area might be 500. So in order to get like 6 dumpsters, just let's say you got a bad clean out, that's $3,000. And if you're using $1,000 in your area, that's going to be $6,000. So it's going to skew our numbers a bit. That's why I was wondering if it was editable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a PDF, and there are ways to edit it, but it's something you could try. Otherwise, mark down or create the sheet yourself, or that kind of thing, and you can make it so that it works for you in your area.
The other thing about this is that there are these types of worksheets out on the web everywhere, and different coaches and different programs use different styles of them all over. But this is what we use based on our areas, based on our experience. This was something that I manipulated from what I got when I was a coaching student of Chris's here at the Rehab 10 years ago. So this actually was something I built from what I was given, because I wanted to make it work for me. And we invite you all to do the same. If this is meant to be a starting point, it's something that is meant to be quick. It's meant to be able to get you off the ground with being able to make an offer, or at least get in the ballpark. And yeah, there's going to be some things that are different based on where you are, or if you have better connections with contractors. So it's a starting point, Melissa. If you can manipulate it or build your own, by all means, go right ahead.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question. I mean, I'm not tech savvy like you and Ken, but that was why I was asking some of the questions, because if I create a new one for myself, it's not that if I put in 3 dumpsters that it's technologically going to automatically add up the totals. I will have to do that, by myself, which is fine. I was just curious how you guys did it and if it was able to be done editable.
Yeah, I did this in Excel, and then saved it as a PDF, because that's how PDFs work. You create them in another application and then create the PDF from that other application.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Ken, were we going to talk about the roof and just a couple of examples of how this can be different, or are you ready to move on to the next section?
No, go ahead.
All right. So a good example of how this can work is this estimates for replacing the roof on a small house to a large house. It's meant to give you a range, but it's not necessarily going to be lock, stock, and barrel reliable. A great example of this is I had a medium-sized home that had a flat roof that didn't have shingles, or it was almost flat. It had a rubber membrane for a top. When you encounter that kind of thing, this worksheet is meant to give you an idea of what you could be running into. anything that's out of normal or out of average, it's more than likely going to run a little bit more. So for that property, for replacing the roof, I went about down the middle and added, I don't know, 20, 30% to that for an estimate on what that rubber membrane roofing was going to cost. It's meant to give you something to go on that you can then run with afterwards, or at least see, you know, have some wiggle room on how you're evaluating your acquisition. Any questions about that? Ken, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, the other part of it is you have, if you're doing this and you're a wholesaler, it's a little different than if you're somebody who's going to do some of the work yourself. You kind of have to evaluate that. You can see in my background, there's a house that may or may not need a roof. You can see, but it definitely did. That was 3 layers of roof, and that was the first house I ever did, and I decided to do it myself. And I've since learned that real roofers can take off that roof and replace it in about a day. And people like me take a week just to get the shingles off. So, you know, the cost was less because I was able to save on materials and do a lot of the work myself. But looking back, it would have been much more advantageous to me to have somebody else do it, given the amount of time it took to do it. But so just keep that in mind.
There is also, like, when you're doing rehabs, there might be like a lower grade of cabinets you use in a kitchen. Or sometimes you're just going to use like Formica countertop instead of going into the quartz or whatever. So it's like you kind of, when you're figuring out things, it's like, what does the neighborhood, what can you put in this property without overdoing it in the neighborhood? So you kind of got to add or subtract or whatever a little bit. But like they said, this is just a general, just to give you a fast number.
Yeah. And one of the things we encourage people to do, and we actually talked about doing this with the property tour, is go to your local stores, Menards or Home Depot or whatever, and look up what the actual prices are of the different materials based on, you know, countertops are a good example. You can buy at Menards, you can buy laminate countertops for, you know, you probably do an average kitchen for about $200 in materials.
Well, hang on, can you go to the next slide? Because we were going to talk about that. That's actually a great segue into the interior and some of the things that you and I were going to talk about.
Yeah. So as I was saying, the range goes dramatic if you go from laminate versus granite or versus, you know, even within the quartz, of course, you've got various grades, and usually it's amazing how the more attractive it looks, somehow that's the higher grade, even though I don't think that's how it comes out of the earth, you know, so. But yeah, so same thing with the interior. We've got it laid out so that you've got the category there. The price, some of it is per foot or per unit, or in some cases, like the appliances, you basically select one of those based on the grade you're putting in, kind of what you were talking about, Shelley. Whereas the lower grade, you might be able to even get lower than that 4,500. But if you're walking into a big box store and just buying a full set, you're probably going to pay around the $4,000, $4,500 mark, especially when you start including an installation if you're having somebody else put it in. So with the kitchen cabinets, I actually usually do a little better than this just because I have my own wholesale agreement with the cabinet makers. But we go based on linear feet, whether you're doing granite versus laminate. This is kind of for the cabinets and the countertops all in one. If you go granite, you're at about 800 a linear foot. And if you go with laminate, you're at about 600 a linear foot. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But cabinets are only part of it. And the same goes for a lot of the other aspects of what's happening in a rehab. So you have going out and buying the cabinets and your sourcing of cabinets. You have going out and sourcing the countertops. You have maybe the island, if you want to put in an island in the kitchen. What's left to be considered for part of that aspect of the project?
Kitchen sink, faucets, handles.
You got all that?
Flooring,
Yep.
Plumbing, yep.
A little bit of plumbing.
Installation, electrical.
Installation, and that's where I wanted to go with this. Thank you for that. The installation makes a huge piece on this also. My best story about this is that I went out and tried to go cheap and find somebody who said they knew how to do cabinets, but I had a guy come in and hang cabinets and basically ruin the appearance of my whole cabinet set with how he was attempting to anchor the cabinets to the walls. And it took about a half a day of this supposed contractor coming in and trying to do everything to make me realize that it wasn't going to happen. So there's the element of buying the products that you're installing, but then there's the installation as well, and how hard the product makes installation, because there's quality of appearance and then there's quality of construction. There are certain products. I have worked with a number of plumbers who will refuse and reject a project or a scope of work from me if I try to put in a Menards one-piece surround tub. They simply will not work with it because of how hard it is and how frequently they break.
Lights are another one.
Lights are a nightmare to install if they are cheap and don't have great hardware. So along with the quality of cabinets, consider how you're going to balance out, or as you start to learn what materials you want to put into a property, consider how the lower cost products affect your installation and the final product on your home. So that's just something to keep in mind that you'll start to see and start to learn about as you go through this process. That's all I had to say about that. Ken, did you want to add anything else in?
No, other than, yes, I've actually also had a set of cabinets ruined by the installer. So you need to be picky about who you have do the work. And I still do some of the work myself, and cabinetry is one of my favorite parts, so I usually do that. But I have hired it out and seen things get ruined, not just cabinets, but other things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions about the interior?
Okay. So the next section is really where I find that I need to get somebody involved. In most cases, I'll do the interior, the exterior, come up with my estimate there. But then when I start to deal with some of the things that you see on the upper part of this, where you've got well, septic, drain, foundation, asbestos, that kind of thing, I will, in most cases, ask the seller if I can bring an expert in to give an estimate before I commit to a price. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, this is the dollar amount I'm willing to pay for your property. What do you think of that? And they agree. And then I'll say, okay, before I'm fully committed, I need to get the well inspected, and I'll pay for the inspection. And the reason for that is there's no real way to know if some of these are good just by visually looking at them. You really got to get somebody who's an expert to get in there and take a good look at it. Certain things like foundation repair can be extremely expensive or not so much. I see we've got a range here from 5 to 20,000. Well, I've had actually one go up to 40,000, but that was actually installing an entirely new foundation, lifting the house and building a foundation underneath it. So it can even go up above and beyond this. But the idea is that for some of these, you really need to call a professional in to get a good estimate. And a good way to handle that, I think, when you're putting offers in is to just say, if it's got a well, I need to get an inspection done. But, my price is, let's just say I'll pay 150, contingent upon the well inspection. And then you renegotiate once you find out what the condition is.
Ken, can I ask, when you do the well inspection, isn't that a criteria that needs to be met if you're like rehabbing it and then selling it again before you can actually have it sold? Doesn't that well have to be inspected?
So nothing has to be done, right? It depends on how you're selling it. Most buyers will require a well, especially if they have an agent. But I've sold many properties with wells where the people bypassed or did not do an inspection on the house. They just
If they
walked
come in
through
with a cash
themselves
offer, they
Yeah.
come in with a cash offer, they can void that, but then you don't have to. But
Or if
Yeah,
you can sell it on land contract,
right,
What's that?
or if you can sell it on land contract, there's no bank and
Mhm.
none of that's involved.
Sure. I suspect, if you're selling to somebody with FHA or VA, that they might require some of these things get inspected in order to approve the loan. And so that's where maybe a requirement comes into play. But even so, a lot of banks don't require the buyers to do this kind of thing. It depends on the loan program that they're in.
Okay. Well, I was just curious, just because of the fact I know sometimes when you rehab a property, you give them like a year's warranty. If something goes wrong,
Sure.
I'll bring my contractor back in. So I was just under the impression that if something were to happen to the septic system, whether the line cracks or, there's something wrong other than that, so that they can't come back on you within the next year or whatever it is. And then you have to make the repairs.
that's not a brand new construction though, because the well was already there. So
Okay.
they wouldn't be probably warranting the well, maybe some of the work, but the well and the septic, that's underground.
Well, that's why I kind of thought as far as having an inspection done, if that was like a recommended criteria.
So I was going to
Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to take issue with the premise that you give a warranty. I've never done that. whether or not I've actually never had anybody come back and complain about a house after they bought it from me. And I probably would step up and fix something if it was obviously not done right or that kind of thing. But the only time there's been a warranty is when I've actually purchased a warranty from, in fact, American Home Shield, I think it's called. I've done that, especially for mobile homes, because it's an inexpensive way. For $500, you get a 1-year warranty, but then they get referred to the American Home Shield, not me. So if they were to call me and say, hey, the furnace stopped working or something like that, I would tell them to call American Home Shield.
Now, what you could potentially do, Melissa, is ask the contractor doing the work, ask the contractor to warranty their work and verify or ensure that that warranty is transferable with the contractor and get that in writing.
Okay. It's
Then
the transferable. Okay.
make sure it's transferable. And then the other piece of this is that some of these warranty aspects are market driven. If we've got a situation like we do right now where houses are flying off the shelves, so to speak, people don't really care that there's whether or not there's a home warranty. Back in 2011 and 2012, when people are still a little nervous about making the big investments, that home warranty was an added marketing piece to help people, make the commitment. So there's a little bit of give and take, and it depends on whether or not you get that type of thing for the work that's done.
Okay. I've just heard that people that do.
I was going to say on individual items too, a lot of times there's a warranty. Like if the furnace gets replaced, whoever put the furnace in will give a warranty. If you have a drain tile system put in, usually your basement drain tile person will warranty that for a period of time. And those are usually transferable.
So do you guys, when you sell a property, once you've rehabbed it, because I'm not a rehabber, so that's why I'm trying to learn what you guys do kind of in your own particular business, do you guys put like a binder together to say, this is like what we use for the cabinets and the countertops and the appliances and this, that. And I've heard people will put like a scrapbook kind of a thing, a 3-ring binder kind of a thing together and then give it to the new homeowner. Do you guys go to that extent or no?
I have not, but I've heard of it done, and it'd be a great tool to become known in the marketplace. Like Veridian does it. When my wife and I built with Don Simon many years ago, we got a big 3-inch binder of information about the house. Did it make us feel warm and fuzzy? Yeah. Do you need to do it as a rehabber? Not so much.
Okay.
I do something. I actually do something like that. It's not quite that fancy. All I do is in the kitchen, there's a drawer somewhere in every kitchen. And anytime I put something in, when it comes with, if it's a faucet, a light, furnace, any product I buy that comes with documentation, I just stick it in the drawer. And then when I sell it, I tell the agent there's a bunch of documents in the drawer. So it's pretty informal, but it is there. So.
And on that note, when we had that property on Borman in Waterloo, the person that bought that place, Ken.
Yeah.
They came back 2 years later and said they wanted a warranty on the shower that was in there because it cracked on the bottom of the shower.
So you sold a house on Borman? I don't. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I looked at that house years and years ago. Okay, I remember now. Okay.
And when it cracked on the bottom by the drain, and they wanted a warranty on it.
You sold it, and they came back to you 2 years later
because it cracked.
And what did they want from you? I'm curious.
They wanted it to be repaired by the contractor because it was faulty.
And what ended up happening?
They didn't get anything out of it because, I'm assuming they both went in the shower, and I'm guessing they were both $400 and $450 each for weight. So, it's like there's. So
the bottom line is you didn't pay anything out.
No.
Yeah.
It's like, the guy would have looked at him and like, oh my God, I can't believe one of you could have fit in there.
Yeah. That's my take. I think when you're selling, I hate to say it's similar to a used car, so, but you've got to just do the right thing when people call, that's my take on it, because I would fix something if I felt like, well, for 2 reasons. One, I would fix it if I felt like something was done improperly. The second reason I would fix it is to avoid getting sued and lose a lot more money.
Yeah,
this wasn't a fault of the, the whole situation wasn't. you know.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a whole lot more time, but it sounded like somebody was going to tell another story of something that happened. I'm curious.
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, I actually just had this happen basically last week. We just sold a house, closed on it, and literally the next day they called saying that there's water coming from the kitchen ceiling. So I went over there personally myself, undid the light, started cutting just a little hole where the light was so I could see what was going on. There's a shower right above there. It only leaked when the shower was running, so that told me obviously it was not a water line. It was some sort of drain line, thinking maybe a missed fitting or something. So long story short, we end up cutting a 2-foot section out of the brand new ceiling, and I don't know how it happened. The P-trap was actually cut by a contractor of something, but I don't know how. It never got caught ahead of time. But we end up replacing that, and actually are currently replacing it and patching the drywall for that person.
Yeah.
So it's just keeping that name and that brand that we're trying to build over here, on the good end. That's absolutely the right thing to do with the house being closed, and also on the next day that happens.
Yep. Stuff happens.
Yep.
So Ken, can we go to the end of this? Because there's
Sure.
one more slide on the, yeah. So obviously the whole intention of this is to do the math. Now, one of the things that's important with all this is to throw in a little bit of that oops factor once you've got your total, because with every project, there's going to be something that happens, just like with what Luke was talking about, and just things that come up. Because this is a business, the whole intention is for you to protect yourself with how you're estimating this project. Stuff happens where, great example is that I estimated some tile work that I wanted to get done on one of my properties. The person ended up doing the work, ended up costing 15 to 20% more than what I estimated. That's an oops factor. You got to work that in. And then also, if you bring in a general contractor, you're going to have to pay that person to manage all your subs to get that work done. So the obvious intention of this form is to be able to break down the project line by line, so it's not overwhelming as a whole piece, as a whole project, and then you can bring it all together at the end with your totals.
Yeah.
Now, there's also that space there for any notes that you may have on the project. When we go through the rehabs in Lake Mills and in Stoughton, this is where you have space to be able to jot down notes that you thought of as you're going through something, maybe something specific that you want to take care of or something specific that you want to look into. But this is how you can use that form. And again, you might use multiple on one property to be able to look at how you want to proceed with that project and make an offer on it. Ken, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say don't overlook this. I did that in the beginning where I was like, well, do I need to add a GC fee? Do I need to add a oops factor? And I paid the price by not doing that. Especially my big stories with the GC fee is that about a year ago I had 3 projects in progress and then had open heart surgery, and because I had additional money available to me, I was able to pay somebody to take over when I was unable to do it myself. And so the problems that you encounter may not even be something related to the property. It could be another outside factor that suddenly comes in and causes you money. And so this is really a risk mitigation. What can you do to mitigate your risk so that you don't wind up, losing on a project?
Any questions about this final section? Hey, Ken, before we go to that final slide, can we go back actually to the slide that has the full form on it on both sides? All right. So now looking at everything all put back together, does anybody have any questions or any thoughts about the whole document, the whole worksheet, and how to use it?
I just can't download it, so
I'm sorry?
I just can't download it. So if somebody can send it to me, I'd be appreciative.
So I
Shelley,
put,
got that second link.
If you copy and paste the link, it will work instead of clicking it.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
so if the link itself isn't working, if you copy the text of that link and then paste it in a browser, it should open up for you.
She's on an Apple, so who knows what it'll do.
Oh,
Well, so am I, and on an iPad. And I won with it, so you can do it.
So am I. I just put it in the browser and then I saved as.
Okay.
Browser and
But
see.
I can
Okay.
email it to you later as well.
Thank you.
did that work?
Well, it's better. Yeah, I forgot
It's
about
better
that
now.
up there. Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Did you say this does or does not include labor in all these?
It does.
Okay.
Now, again, it's where some of it is going to hedge higher, some of it's going to be lower than what you may have locally. That's part of this line of work, is getting to know what you can find in your area and what's right and what's not right with this estimate. It's a starting point. It's meant for you to be able to walk through a property and literally in 10 minutes be able to provide an offer to a seller if you needed to.
Yeah, no, it's great. I just
Yep.
wanted clarification on that. No,
You
I
betcha.
think this would be great to be able to modify, manipulate for, especially if you're doing investing in different areas and prices are different. You know, if you're outside of Madison and in Madison, having different ones to
Yep.
accommodate each. No, this is great. I really appreciate it.
I know that Kent and Joe that do a lot of rehabs. Kent's very good at this, and he was telling me that he just adds 20% to the cost of any project in Madison.
Wow.
Same thing over here.
And I tend to do things outside in the surrounding areas, but I've had similar experience because I've done a couple of projects on Lake Drive and on Lake Shore in Milwaukee, and it's a similar thing. When as soon as somebody sees a high-end house, their prices go up. So,
You know, and the other thing to say about this is that this is your starting point. I'm a pretty conservative purchaser. I don't stray too far from this. However, if you find a property that is really exciting to you, or if you're looking at it with a slightly different purpose, this gives you your starting point and allows you to navigate your negotiation according to what opportunity you see with the property. For example, I found a property that my wife and I were strongly considering buying. It no longer became a rehab for resale. It became a personal residence, which changes the profit side of this. So there's different ways that this can be used, but just keep in mind that it's a starting point.
So on that subject, I would argue when you're doing like for your personal residence, if you're doing house hacking, those kinds of things, the difference in what you're willing to pay is not the rehab. That should be similar or the same. It's really the 70%.
Yep.
You know, if you're planning to move in it, maybe you're willing to pay 100% minus repairs, or maybe you want to save some money, but you're still at 80 or 90%. And same with if you're house hacking, you can pay more for a duplex if you're going to live in half of it than if you're buying it in order to just have it as a rental. So,
all right, let's wrap up, Ken.
All right. So we kind of been through. So on here, you can see, I don't know how well you can see it, but at the bottom on Saturday at 1 o'clock, we're starting at 408 East Washington Street in Lake Mills. That's a rehab that I've owned since December. It's about 80 to 90% done. So that's where we'll meet. We'll look over that house and look at the project, and I'll share what the ARV is, as well as what my rehab budget was and where we're at with it. So it's a good way to see one that's mostly or close to done. So if you can point your camera at that QR code, or you can just go to the Wisco RIA website and go to events and find the property tour event and sign up at either place.
Yeah, and this QR code is going to take you to a form to fill out, and that form is going to say we're going to be going to Lake Mills and Fort Atkinson. We're not going to Fort Atkinson. We've had a last-minute change, so we'll just know that the QR code is going to take you to the correct registration, or the correct form to fill out. We're just going to be going to Lake Mills and Stoughton instead of Lake Mills and Fort Atkinson, just so that you know that that's going to be there.
Good pickup. I didn't realize that was on there.
Yep.
Right.
Will you share the address of the second location?
It's I don't mind doing that. I just don't remember it offhand. Was it 603 Main Street? I don't know.
That was a Ken thing. I had the production side of the show tonight. You had the addresses, Ken.
Yeah, what was the Stoughton? Stoughton, Wisconsin. Is see when I see the picture if that's it. No, that's not it. Oh gosh, darn it.
We will get it to everybody.
Yeah, I'll have to get it to you. I'll email it to everybody who is on here. Yep. And so Keith and I, as you've picked up from this, we're running a coaching program. So if you have interest in doing that, talk to either Keith and I, or you can again do that QR code and it'll take you to a form to fill out to say that you're interested in the coaching, and then we'll talk to you about what that is and what's all involved with that. So we'd love to help anybody out that wants to learn how to take their rehabbing and flipping to the next level. All right. I think that's it. Anyone have any other questions or comments or?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious on what's the time period of knowing all these numbers, and how long did it take to really just finalize the numbers and be satisfied with it, or is it constantly changing?
Well, I mean, Keith and I work separate, and so we basically went over the sheet together. I'm always looking at it, and I've actually gotten burned. When the prices shot up here in the last 2 years with COVID. Well, now COVID's been 5 years. I can't believe it. But when the prices shot up after that, I did get burned where my rehabs were suddenly costing significantly more. And fortunately, that's another good reason for having that oops factor in there is that you build that in, that if you're wrong on your estimate, you've still got it covered at least partially. But I'm always looking at it. And what's interesting is as I do stuff, every project I do, I seem to pick up a new contractor. Where a good example is early on, I had a guy who did some carpet, Dave Roglin. Some of you guys use him. He's awesome. He's fast. He's as cheap as can be, and he does good work, and it's actually to a point with him where I don't even ask him how much he's going to charge me. I just call him and say, I got another one for you to carpet, and he does it. And the price he gives me is always lower than anybody else. And it's great, And so every time I do a project, I pick up a new contractor. And so the only one I haven't gotten a consistently good so far is plumbers. I don't know. There's something about being a plumber. Your time is worth a lot.
Yeah, what I'll say is that
a fitter by trade too, so that's kind of funny.
What I'll say is that the numbers for me worked right out of the gate. What I was able to use this and be close enough to be able to move forward on a property right away. What changed or what happened is that I found contractors that were a little bit more and contractors that were a little bit less, and I was able to secure contractors faster as I did rehabs because you get to know people. So the numbers are good. They're solid right away. They get better as you get connected with contractors, and it gets faster as you get connected with contractors. So
and the other aspect that affects your price is availability. So you can have a good contractor that's cheap and all that, but they're just simply not available when you have a house and you need them.
Yep.
And then you got to move on to somebody else. And so this is really meant to get you in the ballpark. And then from there, you hopefully don't overdo it in one way or the other by too much, So
hey everybody, I got to go. I have another commitment at 7. Ken, thank you very much.
All right.
Let us know if you have any questions. And Ken, I'm assuming you'll wrap things up, but thank you everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Take care, Keith.
So if anybody's got additional questions, feel free to ask me, or I'm willing to stay on for a little while longer.
Do you have any suggestions on how to locate contractors?
Well, my favorite trick is I will often join the Facebook group of the city that the house is in. You've got your buy, sell, trade groups, you got your community pages, and I'll just go on there. And first of all, like if I need a plumber, I'll search for plumber, and you'll usually find 1 or 2 posts where somebody said, hey, who's a good plumber? And then you read through it and you'll find the same name being mentioned multiple times, and I'll call that person.
Smart.
And if I don't find that thread on that Facebook group page, I will put the post out there. I'll say, hey, I'm doing a kitchen and I need a plumber, who's a very reliable, low cost plumber, and you'll get people will give you names. And the nice part about that is you get the names. And then when you call the plumber, let's say Tom Turner put on there, hey, go call ABC Plumbing, right? Then I can call ABC and say, hey, Tom Turner recommended you to me, And so it's almost like a warm lead that they feel kind of like maybe them, and it might be somebody I've never even met before, So
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I have driven by and seen roofers up on a roof and asked them for their business card because I was working on a house that was in that same area. Not that I needed a roofer, but at least I seen that they were there in the morning and they were there at night. They weren't goofing around. And so I've picked up contractors that way too.
Another good way to really get some contractors fast is, I don't know what you guys have in your area, but over here is big as Menards. Go pay someone $20 an hour to go sit in the parking lot all day and write every single contractor that comes in that parking lot.
Yeah. I have actually hired in Menards. They've got the sheets with the people that do like flooring install or windows or whatever. I've called people off of those sheets as well. That's actually worked. One of the better contractors I got came from that. The other thing I've had some success with is if you can find a general contractor that will hire it all out. If you have time on a project where you can bring them in, I have had them come in and just said, hey, this is the scope. I'm doing this, and this. I want a price for all the way I've done it is said, I want a price for all the labor and I will buy all the materials. And then gotten a solid price that they've agreed to do the entire project with. And I've done 3 or 4 projects that way, just having the one person do the entire project.
Nice. Those are all good suggestions. Thank you.
When you do that, Ken, how do you know if you're at the high end of the spectrum, the low end of the spectrum? When he gives you his bid number, how do you know that's acceptable? what do you compare that with or to? Or do you just accept it and then say, okay, when the job is done, I was a little overpriced, so maybe next time instead of, X amount of dollars, I'm going to have to drop it to, if they're looking at, I don't know, $150 an hour, okay, I got to drop it down to 120 and do my average from there.
Well, first of all, I would never do hourly, but with them, because something that can be done in 2 hours can also be done in 8 hours, and so I wouldn't do hourly.
No, but I mean, when you figure things out, because if it takes you 2 weeks and you've got a project and it takes you 2 weeks and they're there, let's say 40 hours a week. So you divide it into 80 hours. Okay, this is what, and I'm just talking your back pocket, not him. So if you go,
to be honest, Melissa, the way, like, to know, is this good or isn't it, really just comes from experience. And there isn't much else you can do besides that. But what I've done is, some of it is just a math problem, right? I'm buying this house. I have a real estate agent that tells me what they believe they can sell the house for when it's done. All right.
So you go after the ARV price.
Right. That's the ARV. And I know what I can buy it for. And then the question becomes, is it a good price? Is really just a matter of, is the price they're giving me going to allow me to make a profit?
Okay.
And if it is, then it's a good price. Even if they overcharge me to begin with, I might find out later that I could get that stuff done a lot cheaper. But I mean, I'm actually at a point where I won't do a project if I don't believe I'm going to make $50,000 or more. And so that's basically it. So if I'm buying a place for 100,000 and my agent is telling me I can sell it for 200,000, then I better get that rehab done for 50,000. And so if the person comes in and says it's going to cost 60, then I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm probably, I either need to go back and get the price lowered from the seller, or I need to walk away from the deal.
Plus, it's like if you have multiple contractors coming in, like when I did a clean out, I had everybody came in at $2,500 to $3,000. And I had one contractor guy come in there at $13,500 for the same thing. And I'm like, okay, it says stupid across my forehead.
Yeah.
Well, no, they were probably looking at you, Shelley, that you were a female and you didn't know the difference.
No, they looked at her and thought, she's really wealthy. Look at her. I'm going to.
I feel like that's a Wisconsin thing. Like, it's I don't want the job, but if you're going to pay me this much, I'll take it.
Absolutely. I sometimes have put my shingle out and done contracting, and it literally is that if you don't want the job, it's like, yeah, normally I do this for 5,000. I really don't want to do it, but if they want to pay me 15 to do it, I'll do it.
Instead of saying, no, thanks, I don't want the job. You
Oh, yeah.
gotta be polite. I'll just charge you 3 times as much.
Right.
Mhm.
People will do that. And I'll admit, I've intentionally raised my prices on jobs I really didn't want, or if I just was too busy. And at the same time, I do that when I'm buying houses. If I've got too many projects going on and too much, my offers on houses goes way down as well. And I'm always shocked at how many of those they accept. And then I wonder, why have I been offering so much?
Ken, what is your workload that you like? Like, how many flips and stuff do you like to have going at all times? And
for me, and it depends. There's a lot of ways to manage it, right? I tend to manage my own projects. I get out of sorts when I get above 4.
yeah,
So-
the reason why I ask is I started this gig like 4 or 5 months ago, and they had no process in place basically whatsoever. Obviously, with me being in the trade and then having running work the last 6 years, I got thrown in with 13 different projects going all at the same time. And now we finally, with all this, especially the spreadsheet, I have my own different thing, same concept. But now I have, I think 12 projects going right now, and one is actually a 16-plex that we're rehabbing. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just was kind of curious, like, how big is your team? But you kind of said you kind of did your own stuff.
So
or per
2
person.
things. One is I'm my own GC, and 2, I tend to do a fair amount of the work. So for me, somebody else who isn't doing any of the work, in his experience, maybe they could do 20 and feel comfortable. I don't know.
12 is good.
12 is good, yeah. But I know people
12
that
is cool, not more.
it all depends on your team too.
Yeah, that's
if
kind of what I'm.
If you've got a
kinda figuring out.
contractor, like I know a guy that he wrote it's called the what is it? Oh, the Automated Landlord. He's a buddy of mine, and he's got one contractor that does all of his rehabs for his rentals. And his entire process is he calls the guy up and says, "This one's a rental." And then he calls on the next one. "This one's a flip." Click. And the guy does everything, right? So if he had 10 of those guys, he could probably handle 50 rehabs at a time, right? So,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I hope some of you or all of you are coming to the, who can, or come to the property tour. The one in Stoughton is actually, I think, possibly a good deal. The ARV on it is 350. I'm told. I haven't checked that out myself. I am going to do that. I'm going to have my real estate agent pull a comp report on it. And they're asking 199 for it. And so there's 150,000 between what they're asking and what it can sell for. So if somebody can do that project, I would think for 100,000 or less, it should be a good deal for somebody if somebody's looking to buy.